I want to get into this whole thing right now with Kawhi Leonard, the Toronto Raptors, and then making their first NBA Finals against the Greek Freak and the Milwaukee Bucks. First of all, when you look at both of these teams going into this season, there were a lot of similarities, right? It was all about finding a way to get over the hump, finding a way to get over to that next level, finding that coach or player that would inevitably get you to that next step, okay? And obviously there's a lot of been made that has been, no LeBron James in the Eastern Conference means that it was wide open and it was everybody's for the taking. And first of all, really, when you look at it, the amount of competition minus LeBron James is really about the same. It was many of the same teams and players from last year. You had Kyrie Irving in the Boston Celtics. You had the Greek Freak in the Milwaukee Bucks. You had the Toronto Raptors back once again. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard led this time as opposed to DeMar DeRozan led this time. The Bucks and Raptors both with different head coaches this time. And then, of course, when you look at the Eastern Conference, really about the same level of competition, okay? Now, here's the thing. One of the things that I talked about last season with Dwayne Casey, when people were really, star-struck about why he was fired, basically what it boiled down to me, because it's obviously been a huge topic of discussion, right? Nick Nurse has been able to get him to the next level. Dwayne Casey wasn't able to. Here's the thing. I've always said you never give a coach less than 7 years. Or more than 7, pardon me, and I don't think you give him less than 4. Well, they gave Dwayne Casey 7 years, and Dwayne Casey really built that team up to where they are now, but he couldn't quite get him over the hump. And for me, the biggest thing, it wasn't because he benched DeMar DeRozan that he was fired. It wasn't because they were not a successful basketball team, because if I remember correctly, last year they had the best record in the Eastern Conference, 59 wins, correct? And it wasn't even because they got shot out in the series 4-0. It was simply because LeBron James reportedly, through many syndications, was telling guys where they should have been lining up. And one of the things that I alluded to going into that series is if the Toronto Raptors were going to be successful against a seasoned guy in LeBron James who understands how to win these games, who knows how to get to that next level, you're going to have to come up with something different. With players like him, you have to implement specific defenses that minimize their opportunities. And then, of course, when you have the type of team that you do in Toronto, as explosive as they are and as young as they are, you're going to have to figure out something new that they have not seen offensively from you before to make it work, to get past somebody to get to the next round. Because as much as I believe that the NBA is a players' league, it still is involved with a lot of coaching, and you're still looking for that coach to get you to the next level. Point-blank situation. And Dwayne Casey didn't offer anything new. And as a result, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were clearly well-studied, and I believe that Tyronn Lue had just as much to do with that as LeBron James, that's how they were able to beat him. And I think when that report came out, that was pretty much what was the straw that broke the camel's back, is exactly how I worded it. It's exactly how it was, and that's exactly how it is, period. And when we look at the Raptors and where they are now, where the Pistons are, which is where Dwayne Casey went to, obviously we see the end result. Trading for DeMar DeRozan for Kyle Lowry, which was another huge topic of discussion then and now, to me was not as bold of a move by the Raptors as many people believe that it was. I know that DeMar was very upset about it. He was very vocal and basically said, look, this is the world that we live in. We live in an ungrateful world, and at any given moment, you could be traded for the next big thing. But that's always been a reality in sports. I mean, back in the 1930s, there were coaches getting fired after a year and a half. I mean, that's just the way that it is. It's always, what have you done for me lately, period. Then, of course, on the other side, you had Kawhi Leonard, who was just being quiet. People were saying he won't stick up for himself. They have no idea what's really going on with him in the San Antonio Spurs. He sat out for 70-plus games. There were even players from San Antonio that were saying, look, other guys have had similar injuries, and they were back in a few games. What's going on with Kawhi? He just doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to be here, right? And then, of course, when he gets traded to Toronto, people made fun of him and said, oh, look, he's going to the Raptors. Oh, that's a good situation to be in, right? Despite the fact that that basketball team was the best team in the Eastern Conference the previous season. At least through the regular season they were, right? So they acted like Kawhi was stepping into this horrible situation. And as if DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard, who, by the way, Kawhi Leonard was already an NBA Finals MVP, was for some reason some mysterious move made by the Toronto Raptors. I mean, could somebody explain that to me? If you told me right now that my favorite team, the New York Knicks, could have traded for Kawhi Leonard, do you think that I would have hated that or something? Like I would have acted like that was a big risk? Or my favorite NFL team, the Denver Broncos, what if they could have found a way to trade for Patrick Mahomes? Do you think I'd be really upset about that right now? The league's MVP is now on my team. So for some odd reason, people acted like Kawhi really didn't want to be there, even though he never said that. And so I say all that to say this. The Toronto Raptors made moves that they absolutely should have made. And I think that the proof is in the pudding. I know that the proof is in the pudding. You look at what Nick Nurse did with this basketball team, which is a lot of the same players, got him to the next level. You look at how a guy like a Fred VanVleet played for the majority of this series, and then all of a sudden, the sleeping giant woke up, basically, and started playing like the Fred VanVleet that people remember at WSU, who, by the way, was never really a tremendous scorer, but he was a good enough scorer. But he played defense, and that's exactly what Kawhi Leonard did. What was it, 35% shooting is what the Greek Freak averaged? And I think that when we look at the Toronto Raptors, I don't think it should be any surprise right now that they are the team in the NBA Finals. A couple of years ago, again, I'm going to reiterate, I said Kawhi Leonard should have been the MVP. A lot of people believed it should have been James Harden, but I thought by breaking the record for turnovers, that automatically should have negated him. And then, of course, the conversation, again, it was all, well, the difference between Kawhi Leonard and DeMar DeRozan or Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, don't you, is if you take away Kawhi Leonard from the San Antonio Spurs, then they're still a good basketball team. Meanwhile, how many playoff series have they won without Kawhi Leonard? I think that we have a tendency to really overblow things and not even really look at the actual situation. And to me, the actual situation was, okay, I've got a really good coach in Dwayne Casey, but can he get my guys to the next step? Can he provide that type of coaching that understands how to not only get my players to play above or maybe even outside of themselves, but game plan for a specific guy like a LeBron James or like a Greek Freak who at only age 24 has already established himself as one of the premier players in the entire NBA. You're going to tell me that you wouldn't want the Greek Freak on your basketball team? Of course you would. I would. Everybody would. We would all take a player with the caliber of a Greek Freak. But I really believe that they got out-coached in this series. I believe that the adjustments that they made, staying even kill, a lot of that does have to do with Kawhi Leonard, but I believe a lot of that also has to do with Nick Nurse because his balance of being excitable on the sideline and allowing Drake to do whatever he wants to do and kind of having those moments and embracing what this series has really been about for the Toronto Raptors and embracing the city of Toronto and what a guy like a Drake means and the influence that he has and understanding the influence of a guy like a Kawhi Leonard and knowing how to play into those guys and get them to play above themselves because when the series was 2-0, I think a lot of people wrote this series off. Even at 2-1, people went, okay, they're going to win one, right? Good for them. They're still fighting. They're not going to let anybody shut them out. Well, 4 wins in a row later, which is something that had never happened to the Milwaukee Bucks all season long. They never lost more than 2 games in a row. You know how hard it is to win 4 games in a row in the NBA playoffs and the NBA period? Guys, to me, this is exactly how it was supposed to go. Kawhi Leonard was going to do this. And if anybody thinks that Kawhi Leonard didn't want to be there, doesn't want to be there now, which I don't think that should be the topic of discussion, because I think that it's not fair to Kawhi right now, given what he's accomplished with this basketball team and as an individual. But I think that the topic of discussion should be who they are and how can they beat the Golden State Warriors with Game 1 looming this Thursday. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Don't forget you can find the Full Court Press on Facebook and Instagram as well. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.